FilmCrazyAdam here. We're going to try something new for this Went to the Movies review. I'm about to go see Dracula Untold with a good friend of mine, and he's going to sit in with me for the second part of this review, and we're going to kind of do a co-review. We'll see how that works out. But anyway, before I do that, okay, my thoughts before going to see Dracula Untold. I have hope. No, I don't have hope. I want this to be a good movie because what was the last good vampire movie that came out? Seriously. Everyone has their favorite, and I find that it's really hard for audiences to agree on what was a good vampire movie. Not giving Twilight even a half an inch of ground on this one. We're not. That's just complete and utter horse crap. But thinking about movies like Interview with a Vampire or the 2000 Dracula movie with, I think it was 2000, the one that had Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves in it, or Van Helsing or Underworld, those werewolf vampire movies. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I looked around, I'm like, there's no real consensus that people, whereas 98% of people who saw Avengers thought it was a good movie. There's consensus there. This was a good movie. Same thing with Guardians of the Galaxy. 99% of people saw this movie and were like, that was a good movie. Or, going in the opposite direction, most people who saw Sin City were like, that was pretty terrible. So, what I'm getting at is that there's really you can't get a full-body consensus from people of what is a good vampire movie. Again, Twilight can go suck it. The Twilight Saga can just suck it. That's not a vampire movie. That's bullshit. But, so, as soon as I give this review, as soon as this gets posted, there are immediately going to be people, and that's fine, and I'm expecting that there will be immediately people who are going to agree and disagree. This movie, I'm hoping that it just gives a new spin on the whole Dracula thing, but staying loyal to the core story of what a vampire is. Like, everyone knows that vampires, they burn up in sunlight, they suck blood, they're really, really strong, they got fangs. In older versions of the story, he can shapeshift. Shapeshift to a bat, shapeshift into mist. He can't cross water. I don't know how they're going to go with this. This is obviously an action movie, an action horror movie. So, and some people think that action, when you add action to a horror movie, it kind of takes away from the suspense and the horror and the dread of the situation. So this might just be an action movie with a horror character and horror elements. Like, I honestly don't know if this is an actual horror movie. This might just be an action horror movie, which is fine. I like those. Hell, there's one movie that I like that me and 7 other people like this movie, and most people hate it. And I'll tell you what that is at some point. Not right now. I'm gonna review it, and I heard that movie sucks at some point. Anyway, I'm expecting. I don't know what to expect really. I like Luke Evans. He's the guy who plays Dracula. I really do like him. Yeah, he was Zeus in the Immortals. He's Bard in the Hobbit movies. I like him. He's a good actor. So I'm hoping to get a really good performance from him. I'm really hoping to enjoy his performance. If nothing else, I'm expecting a good performance out of him. And that dude who's like in the cave, if you've seen the trailer, that's probably going to be an intense scene. I hope it is. So just to reiterate my very unorganized thoughts, I don't know what to expect going into it. I'm hoping for a good story. It's supposed to be a horror movie, but if you give me a good action movie with a good horror character, that's okay. I'm cool with that. I'm hoping for a good story. It looks like a Dracula origin story, and honestly, how many of those have we seen? Seriously, how many Dracula origin movie stories are there? Can't really think of it. I mean, they kind of imply it in like Blade Trinity, and they kind of hint to it in Underworld, but we never actually see an origin story for Dracula. So that's more than anything, believe it or not, more than the action, more than the actors. That's the one thing that actually kind of is pulling me in. It's like, okay, so this is an origin story. I don't think I've ever seen a Dracula origin story movie before. So let's see where they go with this. That being said, I'm gonna go see where they go with this. All right, talk to you guys in a bit. Hey guys, FilmCrazyAdam here with my good old buddy Otaku Jay.
Hi guys.
Quick introduction for Jay is I met him working at Suncoast, and if any of you are old enough to remember Suncoast,
Way back when.
it was where you went for movies, and we got paid to just stand there and talk to people and each other about movies. Greatest job I've ever had, and so far the one person I can carry on a conversation for 7 days straight with, no one else is as good of a conversationalist as this guy, and he's the best person I could think of to review a movie because he's the only person I know who talks more about movies than I do.
Thank you very much, brother.
Alright. So we just went and saw... Well, first, anything else you want to add, or is that...
No, I'm good.
So we just came back from Dracula Untold.
And loving it.
And before we continue that part of the review, I need to make some corrections, preemptive corrections, right now. Had I shot this review myself, I just would have reshot it, figuring out my mistake. As it so happens, me and Jay goofed, and we were just too lazy to double-check the credits. We're going to start talking about the actor Daniel Cooper. He plays the Sultan in this movie, but, like I said, we didn't double-check. Anyway, we're really talking about the actor Charles Dance, who is a fantastically great actor. So good. He was also in Last Action Hero as the villain. He was also in The Golden Child as the villain, Sardar Numspa. Love that name. By the way, if you get a chance, go watch Golden Child. Great movie. Anyway, back to that part of the review. Okay, so I already gave my pre-movie thing and explained how I felt going into it. And I'll let you know that going into it, I was just expecting... I honestly didn't go in with much expectation, but I knew what the basis of the story was, which was... just from the trailer, I'm like, this looks like an origin story. And I hope they don't F it up. Hope they just tell a good story. I'm willing to let a lot go if the story is good and it's well acted.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll start talking about the movie, give our opinions, then we'll start going back and forth, and we'll get into some spoilers at some point, because the ending of the movie was interesting, and we'll get to that.
Yes, I completely concur.
Alright, so first and foremost, let me just... Did you like it?
I enjoyed the movie. I really did. I went into this movie with a lot of trepidation. Some of my trepidation was well justified, it would seem. And...
Like what? Like what were the things that you were kind of... I hope they don't F this up.
Okay, well, when we first went to the movie, I asked you two questions. First question being, if this movie was about any other one person than Dracula,
right,
would you still care about this character? Yes, I actually would. It was very well acted. And the second question was, if it was called anything other than Dracula, and this was based on anything other than Dracula, would it be just as good? Would it be better? And I kind of have to say I wish they hadn't called the character Dracula. I wish they had actually made him a completely original character going off of the Dracula myth.
I think if they had done that, though, there would be too many people just calling them out and saying, this is Dracula, why don't you just call him that? We know who this is.
Oh, I know, but I think they could have done a little bit more creative, saying this was the character that was based around Dracula. A supposition, a prologue, or even an epilogue, somebody said, I have had many names throughout history.
Okay. I wasn't sure where you were going with this.
Yeah,
like,
alright. I've had many names around history. There's been many mythos attached to me, many stories. Some of them true, some of them false. It would have brought everything.
I am the bringer of death, and
yeah,
it's like end your ass.
It would have brought everything together, especially at the end, where they could okay, this is the story that inspired. If they went on the idea, this is the story that inspired Dracula ish, it would have been, I think, one be a much more interesting character. I am not Dracula, but before we get to the spoiler talk, because that going any farther will go into spoilers. Now,
well, before we go into spoilers,
yeah,
I see where you're going with this, but it wouldn't have worked the way that the story was told, because the story is, I can confirm now that it is in fact an origin story.
Oh, of course.
It's a semi, or I would almost say it's like one step removed from an origin story, because generally when you think of an origin story,
Yeah.
you think of, patient zero.
Yeah, it's like, as far as the origin story though, they took a lot of liberties. I mean, because the
Mhm.
Dracula you see here is, for those who are fans of the classic Dracula, even the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, which was more of a updated version of Dracula.
Mhm.
This is a much more comic booky Dracula, in the way in which the story and action is told cinematically.
I mentioned that too, that this movie, even though it's a horror character that it's based off, it's not real. It doesn't feel like a horror movie, and it wasn't
No.
a horror movie. It had horror aspects of it. There was like some good blood shots and some good use of shadow.
But
We both agree that the cinematography was fantastic.
was absolutely brilliant. We gotta give hands down to the cinematographer. Unfortunately, I don't have his name, but like, the guy was just a freaking genius. Every shot was framed beautifully. The special effects, 99% of the time, were spot on.
My biggest complaint about the special effects is that it obviously wasn't shot in the middle of a giant valley in Transylvania. So, and knowing that during certain parts, certain scenes, that did take it away. I did get kind of pulled out of it. Like, I know you're on a soundstage, or you're like, I don't know where they filmed it. Maybe out in the forest somewhere, but you're not in this giant valley, like a glacier just scooped through there.
Kind of comes back to one of the problems I think we both had with certain parts of the movie was continuity.
You're always going to have those problems, and I am the first one to point those out.
I mean, there's small continuity problems, like, okay, somebody's hair is leaning on this side to this side, and then there are other glaring continuity.
Luke Evans played Vlad the Impaler, aka Dracula, and just from scene to scene,
he did a good job.
Luke Evans was a great actor, but just from scene to scene, his costume would keep changing.
Yes,
now he's wearing armor. Now he doesn't have long sleeves. Now he's just wearing.
Yeah, somehow he goes into a cave wearing his armor, his normal regal attire. Then he wakes up and suddenly his undershirt has disintegrated,
and he's just wearing his leather armor or just a few pieces of plate. But I even joked well, he died in the cave. I guess Dominic Cooper just kind of molested him while he was asleep.
Yeah,
what do you think I did to you? How do you think you get these powers?
I prefer to think that his undershirt was water soluble. So actually, I do gotta give a call out to Dominic Cooper. He owned his scene.
Oh my God!
He really owned his scene.
I'll argue he was the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't in it from Dominic Cooper. Also played, for those of you who may know, also plays Tywin Lannister on Game of Thrones. He's had a long film career playing this type of character.
He's a character actor. Plays usually demonic characters or evil characters. And he's got such a fantastic voice. He's so got the voice for this.
And he just nailed it. Now
he had they shot that man, I don't know what he got paid, but whatever it was, he got paid for 1 day's worth of work.
Yeah.
He was in technically 2 scenes, but we'll get to that second scene. But that one scene in the cave was fantastic.
Now the one thing I got to talk about, the only thing that really distracted me from couple of the scenes is there are some directorial choices that I think were some mistakes, and kind of this was the first time. I do know this was a first-time director. This is his
directorial debut.
Yeah, directorial debut.
I
I have a vocabulary, I swear. And you can see some rookie mistakes. You can see some trying to be ambitious, maybe trying a little bit too hard. Because there's 1 or 2 parts with the CGI with Dominic Cooper where they're trying to accentuate his monstrosity. And I think that little snippet was just... Cooper had the attitude down so much that they added a CGI element to it that I actually think took away from the scene
It was
more.
a step too far.
Yeah, I think
it was that one. It's like it was that one bit more of icing, or that one more dab of ketchup. You're like, and then you just realize that's a little bit too much.
Yeah, and there are a few scenes throughout the whole thing that were like just a little bit too much. Now, one of the biggest complaints I do have about the movie, and it was one of the things that kind of took me away from it, and it's the fact that this movie takes place in Transylvania, in Hungary, and 90% of the Hungarians and Transylvanians are speaking British English.
Like there's a lot I can't forgive in a movie. Accents are literally accents for whatever reason. That's the one thing that I can bypass, and for storytelling purposes, we're just gonna go with it.
Well, I would agree with you if everyone was speaking with the British accent.
But the Turks had kind of a Middle Eastern accent.
Yeah, but everybody else who was appropriate had appropriate accents. At times, what was the lead actor's name again? Luke Evans. He would affect a slight accent in some of his scenes, but it seemed very inconsistent to me. Not so much that okay, he's downplaying it, but it was one of the things that kind of took me out of it, because beginning scene, first watching this movie, it didn't feel like a Dracula movie. It didn't feel like a vampire movie. There was something very bright. It felt very...
It felt like an action movie.
Yeah, it's
the vampire thing was more of a plot device than an actual focus.
It's actually more, it felt... The movie's sense of place, and it didn't feel like it took place in Hungary to me. It didn't feel like a Transylvanian movie. It felt like an English movie to me. And that's why I say the accent.
Just by the accent?
Yeah, just by the accents, even the way their mannerisms, their garb, it seemed very English-British.
So I was like,
Middle Eastern.
It doesn't feel like a Transylvanian. It's why is the movie... it doesn't feel like a Transylvanian movie. Why is the grass red in Transylvania? But anyway, so overall, I enjoyed it. I liked the movie, and I think it was. We both agree that it was well shot. I thought it was pretty well directed and well acted by everyone. It was pretty well acted.
It was well acted by. I think there was some writing that was a little bit too far. There's some. Yeah. There are a few scenes where I gotta say there are jumps in logic that this movie became very easy to lampoon.
When you say jump in logic, do you mean because
there were things that jump in logic? We're going to go into the spoiler talk discussion.
We'll get to that. Yeah. I just want to.
We'll get back.
Overall, this movie I thought was. I did think it was very good. Anyone going to see this movie, if you know anything about Dracula, I was impressed. I can't remember a movie where they actually used his shape-shifting abilities, other than a rubber bat and a bad morphing effect.
Yeah.
He didn't turn to mist. He didn't turn into a wolf, but he did, particleize and become a bat.
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of on. I love the bat effect, but I think they almost overused it. I would like to see.
I was going to say that.
I would like to see a little bit more subtlety in the way in which he used it. I think one of the problems is, as storytelling, they put the character on a time restraint.
What do you mean?
That to the.
Okay. This isn't really getting too big into spoilers, so we'll go into this right now. That the story as it starts out is Vlad. They go into this really brief backstory about how he was a child soldier, and then he became king by his own hand, and he is now the king of a castle. And it's not a province. It's not, I guess, a village.
No,
there's this giant freaking castle, and then there's 5 houses in front of it.
You gotta remember back then castles were small. You basically have your.
This wasn't a small castle.
Well, you'd have your castle, then you'd have a small outlying village. You didn't really get to see much of the outlying village within it.
The thing is that, and when you see it, it's just like what I was saying. This wasn't a real location. The castle is up on top of this one ridge. And then there's a valley, and there's 5 houses, and then on the other side of the valley there's just trees.
That was the secondary castle. He had his living castle, which was the one
Well, bottom line is, like, there's no way that there's a villain. Like, there's literally just no place for
Yeah,
it.
actually, that one was actually the Abbey you're talking about. Because the first one, the first one was
Castle Notre Dame.
Okay, yeah. Then and they never called it the Castle Notre Dame.
It looks like the Cathedral of Notre Dame, but it's Castle Dracula.
Yeah, they call it Castle Dracula,
which gets turned into rubble at one point.
They call it Castle Dracula. They never refer to the Carpathian Mountains as the Carpathian Mountains, but instead the Thang Mountains. There are some...
No, I think it was just that one mountain.
Yeah, the one mountain.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're just like...
Not the
the screenwriters, like, they're, you can see the comic book influence in this movie. You can see the superhero influence. And I would like to see if they didn't have the talent... Okay,
Well,
okay,
I was gonna say the pacing, like going back to the overallness of the movie. I thought it was other than some certain scenes. There were some scenes that Vlad just teleports, and not because that's his power. It's just because we edited. So now he's over here. Now he's down here.
Yeah,
that was a little inconsistent. Still enjoyed it overall, and I thought the pacing for the first half of the movie, it felt a little rushed, or that they were cutting stuff out.
Yeah, I could see.
And then it starts to slow down and drag a little bit, I thought, in the second half.
Where I can
well, things that took less time in the first half of the movie, like he's climbing this mountain, okay, now he's in the cave, okay, now he's talking to the guy, now he's out of the cave.
Yeah.
And then the battle scenes, where they really wanted to emphasize that he is this unstoppable creature. Let's talk about that one battle.
Okay, the first.
Let me mention the one battle scene. The first, Dracula gets his powers. His castle is being besieged by the Turks, and he basically says to everyone in the castle, "Stand back, I got this." He goes. This is right after he goes into battle in his bat form, and he just lands and then becomes human, and then just starts like cutting people up. He cuts up an entire army in what we're led to believe is like
a matter of minutes?
Like 10 minutes?
10, 15 minutes.
I mean, this is something that one guy fighting an army of even if you were the Tasmanian Devil, it would take you like 6 hours to, and if every single shot was and just running through, just killing
10,000 people in 10 minutes. Yes, Dracula can do it.
And it was funny.
He slices his dices, he even makes julienne fries.
And it was funny because his guy is what settled for his army. He doesn't have an army. He just has some guards. They come running out like all armored up, and they got like, all right, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
What happened here? He's like, don't go. It's all right. I got this.
This is where I come down to like
that was kind of
premier director making and writing, making some really bad jumps of logic, and there are some. One of the weaknesses of this movie are there are a lot of times where you have to make some really jumps of logic.
There's a lot of you just gotta roll with it moments.
Yeah, and
like, wait, what? Like,
and it can be destroying. There's just like as a moviegoer, I'm watching the movie and I go, what the hell? And this happened to me a lot with this movie. I mean, I'm watching this movie, and I even saw you a couple times going,
yeah.
And
there's a little bit more. So I'm just like, huh? my head just goggling. Like, what the hell?
And it's like there's just like I said, beginning director. This is his launch pad, his directorial debut, and there's just I don't know whether it was a studio thing or what have you, but there were just like times it was like, okay, this is a little bit ridiculous, or like this makes no sense. And let's talk about the fight scene. Now, the beginning battle when Dracula finally gets his powers. Now, this is not really a spoiler because when he gets into it, when Dracula basically finds out his kingdom is under siege.
Well, he finds out
his.
It's alright. They set it up as he just came. The movie starts out. He's in the middle of the woods with like 3 of his guys
hunting for Turks.
I don't even know what they were doing out there. They were probably just going out. Yeah, they were just gonna drink beer and like talk about the football game.
Yeah, that's one of those jumps of logic where you got like, okay, why is he out here to begin with? They never really do answer that.
Yeah.
Other than they found.
But you roll it. You're like, all right, it's a medieval setting. He's scouting.
Yeah.
They do. You got to do that all the time. People are there to kill you.
Yeah.
And he finds this helmet from a Turk. Right off the bat, my huge question was, he makes this huge leap in logic. They find this helmet from a Turkish soldier. They don't find anything else. No head, no nothing. And his first thought is he went up the mountain, Fang Mountain. And I let it go because this was literally 45 seconds into the movie. And I just kind of let it go. I was like, all right, I guess we're going to Fang Mountain.
See that. I'm understanding when you're patrolling. Okay, a soldier dropped his helmet. That's not part of our country. That almost makes sense to me.
But this helmet had like
that's what I was going to get into. How he didn't notice the huge gases in the helmet.
When it looks like you got punched in the head by Wolverine.
Yeah.
In the 1400s.
But like essentially, when he the short version is when he makes his deal to get his powers. He's basically told you have 3 days in which you'll have these powers. If you drink blood within those 3 days,
it's permanent.
It's permanent. Now that, unfortunately, while really neat,
Dominic Cooper makes a deal with it. Well, for some reason he doesn't kill him right off, and even he sounded confused. Everyone sounded Luke Evans, Dominic Cooper. Everyone sounded confused by like why. So yeah, people don't usually come back. Well, usually there aren't any survivors to leave. So yeah, but why are you here? Like everyone's confused. Like I just want to win.
Yeah, and it's like I thought.
And then he gives them. And then he. It was a fantastic scene.
Oh yeah.
Well worded. Well, great dialogue. But then he gives him his. He's like, all right, I'll give you power, and in 3 days, if you'll have all my powers. You can see in the dark. You'll have X-ray vision. You can fly. You have all the powers of the creatures of the night, and if you drink blood in 3 days, then you're stuck this way.
Yeah, and Dominic Cooper did such a really powerful scene, and you get the setup that this was a character that was important, and he actually towards the end ends up becoming important in a very subtle way. So you get the idea this is a guy this guy has been around for eons and generations. And the problem with the whole 3-day thing is I think that kind of screwed up a lot of the pacing for the movie because they had to do these. You had to start showing day. You had to start showing day and then night and day. And that's like one of the things that started with the whole rushing of why the movie kind of felt rushed in certain parts because you only had X amount of days which he could use these powers. And unfortunately, the first 2 days he basically sat on his ass. And nothing happened. He was like, we got
the first battle, his castle is attacked. It's turned it's unlivable. He kills 8,000 people in 6 minutes, and then he's like, "All right, well, we gotta head to the abbey on the top of this mountain." You're missing part. He killed 8,000 people in 6 minutes, and nobody saw anything. Nobody saw nothing. This comes down to one of these huge jumps in logic where you're not sure if there were scenes that were cut out, because all of a sudden there's a character. Not to spoil it, that somehow realizes he's a vampire. Oh my, we'll get to that. Holy crap. No, we'll jump to that right now. He gets his people to the abbey, and he's just walking out of his room. It's not just him, it's like 5 people. Yeah, 5 like the last one in line, and everyone's... where are they going? Are they going to a meeting? They're going to a meeting. Yeah, they're going to a meeting. And he goes like, stop. They file out, and he's the last one, and he just, he sees the sunlight right there, and he stops. And this one dude, just random friar, just walking... Yeah, it's like one of those things. It's not even one of those stops where he puts his hand in and goes, oh my god. He's just like that's one of those Paul stops like you and me probably do when you step outside. Oh shit, I forgot my keys. Yeah, it wasn't one of those dramatic like it was a cliff and you're like whoa. It was just. I think I'll go this way. I forgot my key. And so then this guy follows him and stalks him as Vlad makes his way around. And somehow pulls out the holy sword of justice. There are so many swords made out of silver. Who makes swords out of silver? Who does this? And how is that such common knowledge? That's another whole thing. One of these jumps in logic, because it actually comes down towards the end, too. It's like... Backtrack at the very... Oh, that was a great... Yeah, we'll talk about the kryptonite moment. But backtrack, Vlad, like I said, he goes up to this mountain... right after he finds that helmet, we're back at the beginning of the movie. We're 3 minutes into this movie. He goes up to this mountain. He goes inside. 2 of his guys get picked off by the creature that lives there. He leaves, goes back to his castle, and mentions to the priest there or something, completely different guy than the guy who was stalking him later. Yes. And He says, yeah, so I went up on the mountain and,
Past their plot device.
yes! No, past their exposition.
Yes, that.
And he's like, yeah, so, you know, Ted and Bob, yeah, they're not coming back.
Yeah.
They were eaten. Their faces are gone. And so, the guy's like, well, I've got this book that explains everything about this movie.
He has the Necronomicon.
Yeah.
For those who ever watched the TV series Teen Wolf, he has the original bestiary. And page 1, the vampires, with a perfect drawing of the...
It was a great drawing. It's like, okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
this was drawn how many thousands of
Yeah,
years ago?
which was essentially trying to describe the first vampire, give the backstory on the first vampire character, which was Dominic
Cooper.
Cooper's character.
And in this movie, vampires came about, and this is what I mean, like, it was sort of an origin story, because origin stories, like I said, you deal with patients. You want to find out how Spider-Man started, or who the first mutant was, or who the first this was. This one, it's like, well, he's actually the second vampire. The first vampire made a deal with the devil.
Actually, instead of calling it an origin story, it's actually probably a bit more accurate to call it a origin reboot.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they're completely rebooting the whole Dracula mythos with a little bit more modern twist on it. And you got like the duality of the monster and the man being actually two separate people.
Yeah, I was surprised they didn't really do a lot. They didn't do anything with that story. There were times where he was stressed and he was like, oh, I gotta get away from people or else I'm gonna eat them. And I don't want to be cursed forever. But at the same time, and usually, I've seen in some stories where they actually battle with that, where it's like, well, now I'm this monster now and this totally sucks.
Yeah,
I gotta,
there's
battling my darkness inside.
They're focused on so much of the visuals, and like one of the things that kind of threw me off is like the first battle when he awakens to his power. They started off with this shaky cam kind of thing that like really kind of threw me off in the first battle scene. Later on, you see some beautiful fight choreography, and like it was kind of a shame to see this.
Yeah.
Beautiful fight choreography be diminished by this shaky cam that only happens in one scene in the whole entire movie. That's the only time I've ever seen a shaky cam used through the whole movie. It'd been one thing if you could see it consistently through like the different battles and stuff, but like there's only this one scene that seemed just like it was thrown in. It's like, I'm not sure how to do it. We're going to do like this shaky cam thing. It's like, and shaky cam doesn't always work in fantasy, and unfortunately in that instance it didn't work.
Not for nothing. I hate shaky. If you want to do like rumbling camera, that's fine. But
yeah.
I freaking hate shaky cam. I think because you can't see nothing. And on that note, I think they overused the bat. Like you said it before.
Yeah.
You think they overused the bat element. I thought they overused it because all the time you're seeing it in, like right there in front of the camera lens, and so you can't see. And I'm like, well, what's the point of this if we're just seeing basically static?
Yeah, there's like that one. There's one scene on one of the battles. It turned out to be a really neat scene, but like when the bats come out, you got all these bats and dots flying in your face. And maybe if it was in 3D, I know it's been done in IMAX. I'm not sure if it was in 3D.
I don't know.
But if the movie was actually shot in 3D, that would have been a neat effect to have the bats come out in 3D. But like that seems like one of those scenes that were made for 3D. But for a general movie audience, it's just like
chaos.
Chaos on the screen.
This on screen.
And the problem is like you see this huge swarm of bats come out, start literally decimating everybody. I mean, these
like
were
think about the mummy.
Each bat must have weighed at least like 15 pounds the way they were balling.
That's enough. All right,
bowling over people. And the fact is, none of the army goes, shit, we're done. We're
no one questions.
Nobody runs. Nobody says like, what the hell?
And to be fair, it's because it's bats. I mean, they only, like, in real life, they only weigh, like, 4 ounces.
Yeah.
Like, a third of a
real
pound.
bats weigh 4 ounces.
Yeah.
Well, these are also Transylvanian bats. So these bats, like, they look maybe like they could maybe weigh a pound or two. Because these are fairly large
so they're
bats.
big enough to carry coconuts or something?
Well, if you grab them by the hooves.
What had a line between the two? Anyway. Alright,
like,
second battle scene. The second Turkish army, which I don't know where they keep coming up with these guys, and I don't know where they're coming from.
I mean, there was like a pepper mill, Turkish soldiers. I think each one has. If you look really close,
it was like a video game. They just respawn.
Yeah, they had a little.
You kill them and they respawn.
They had a little number on the back of their necks. Wave number 3, wave number 4. Because I'm going to just stand there and get bowled over.
because Vlad only has the 3 days to he's giving these powers for 3 days, and so he thinks, oh, that's more than enough. I've got this one army that's on my doorstep. I'll kill it, and then he finds out, oh, there's another army right behind that. We better fall back to the church thing.
Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the Turkish general. This guy is a.
Well, So getting back, so it comes down to things don't happen in a timely manner. Like Vlad kills 8,000 people in 5 minutes, and then the very next, it takes armies weeks or months. It takes, because you're moving a lot of people, and they're just walking. It takes time to move these forces.
Yeah, somehow.
And yet he's like you said, they're just marching in one after another. Like, oh, we killed off this army, while the other army, they never say, oh, it's like 3 days away, or it's just around the corner. It's just suddenly, there's another army there.
Somehow he is able to mobilize 10,000 Turkish troops in a matter of 2 days. No, in a matter of
a day and a half.
About a day and a half to siege a castle with 4 war support. We're talking catapults, ballistas, the whole shebang. I think they even had
full
a couple
arsenal.
They had a few claymores and mortars back there somewhere. But somehow they were able to mobilize this in a span of less than a day and a half. It's just one of those, again, that we talked about, jumps in logic. It's like, okay, I understand they're need to move things along, but it came to that whole pacing thing of 3 days to you have my power. That kind of set a really weird restraint for the movie that kind of really took away from it, because it took away from that believability of like, okay, how can they mobilize this many people in this amount of days?
You're right. They locked in that time thing, and you're suddenly and it stops, because you can just go from day to day or month to month with a fade, and no one questions it, and that's how it's done, and that's fine. But you're right. They locked in a time frame. Like, you've got 3 days.
And there was also Dracula's descent into hunger. And one of the classic things about vampire movies is like the whole thirst, the whole hunger thing. And when he first gets it, you see him fighting with the hunger. But for the most part, it almost seemed kind of like, okay, this is bothering me. This is what I'm going to move away.
Yeah, it's more of a kind of like how alcoholics avoid going back to alcohol. They're like, I think I'll just leave the room. As opposed to how it's been described as me. Vampire hunger is the hunger that Firefly fans feel for a second season.
Yes.
You would kill 1,000 men to have that box set if it were to exist.
Because the movie was set in this constraint of 3 days, you never really got to see that slowly descent into hunger. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it creeping up. If they had paced out this movie a little bit longer, even like 3 months, or even paced into a year, where all this happened and transpired. The one thing about this movie, those who are history buffs like myself, those who have a knowledge of the actual Tepish folklore and history, there are going to be times in this movie where you're going to be pulling your hair out of your head. And it's kind of, like I said, one of those like writing gaps. I'm not quite sure where I'm going with, but like this may detract some people who are like diehard Vlad Tepes fans, even some diehard Dracula fans that may go like, this is not a movie for everybody. This is not your grandmother's Dracula. And
well, like I said, this is showing the origin story. Most Dracula movies take place present day, or like within the 20th century. So all of this that you see has already happened. So that's why I can roll with it and be like, well, we've never seen it. It's kind of mentioned that he was in a wartime, but we never see it. Okay, now we saw it. So, but I just thought of something. It just went away. Continue.
Now, here's a question for you. I told you when we went into this movie had to compete for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, they gave a backstory of Dracula's origin, how he became Dracula in a 5-minute flashback.
More or less a montage, but
Yeah, the montage flashback. And it really made you care and sympathize for the character. And how does this movie hold up against that 5 minutes?
If it was done with, like you said, over a longer time frame, and I just realized I just thought of it occurred to me in the theater, and I was like, you know how I would have done this, because you mentioned that, and I'm like, well, how can they get around this whole locked in time frame thing? And it would show actually more of a breaking down of the character as he kind of spirals down
Into
out
dark.
of like he's a noble, he's a kind human, and this is him spiraling down into darkness and becoming more of a monster.
And the thing is that you never really
is if the guy says, yeah, you can only have these powers for 3 days, that's fine, and then he loses his powers, and he's like, well, I gotta go back, and he goes back and gets more power, and then that's only like. And he becomes
pusher man.
He becomes a drug. Like you even made that joke. Like you gotta go to the mountain to get your cocaine now.
Yes.
And I think that would have made for a little bit more of an interesting story if he had to keep going, because that would show him being corrupted. And becoming a monster.
You never really saw that Dracula's. You're told in flashbacks about how cruel and vicious he was. They call him Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
So
they open up with that.
Yeah. So they keep the whole impaling history down. It's just I don't think they really played up enough.
He's Mr. Brady, basically. Yeah. You go home and he's Mr. Brady.
He came off a very sympathetic, very likable, and he never really. There's only one scene where you saw that dark side of him actually creep up again. It would have been one thing if you could see this was a guy that was haunted by regret over what he did. But you never really see that either. And it's kind of to the movie's deficit.
Yeah, you can argue that that's the again, this whole movie comes down to that time crunch. We've got 3 days. So not enough things develop in 3 days, really. Romances don't develop. Relationships don't develop.
Yeah.
Colds develop in 3 days. That's kind of it.
Ebola develops.
Ebola does that. And at the end of it, you crap your organs out.
Yes.
But all right, I think we've touched on the movie more or less.
Actually,
okay, you got more.
Actually, I want to talk about the actor who played the Nemesis, the big, the Persian general.
Right,
this guy was the Carl Urban. Like when I first saw the previews, he looks like Carl Urban. I was like, I've seen this character before. He does. He looks like, dude. He looks like a smaller Carl Urban from Riddick. But beyond that,
I'll give you that. He did look like Carl Urban from Riddick. But
beyond that, this character exuded way too much confidence after seeing half of his army blown away by a crap ton of bats.
Yeah, you're right. I'll give you that. He never. He's never terrified. He's never worried. And he comes off as like
I can understand.
He comes off as like he's got the biggest dick in the world.
I mean, there's a difference between being confident and being ridiculous. And this movie this is one of those things where it jumped some logic. And now we're definitely getting into spoilers.
All right. Okay. So we're approaching spoiler territory, and we'll get to that. And I want to jump into that next.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right. Well, first of all, it's like the Persians are impervious. If any of you have read the book Animorphs, and this is such a shot in the dark and such a random reference. Oh my God! If any of you know who the Helmicrons are. They are Helmicrons.
It's that guy over there.
Nobody gets this reference. No one read that book series except for me. I like that. That was a good book series. Don't condescend me. Anyway,
we're not judging.
No matter what the circumstances, like they could see their planet explode and they'd be like, we got this. We're better than you. We're gonna kick your ass. They never lose confidence, even in the face of a demon. They never, ever lose confidence. You're right.
And this
the entire time he's like, I'll kill you. It's no problem.
What makes a good hero is a good villain. This is writing 101. This is storytelling 101. You can tell a lot about your hero by who his villains are, who his enemies are. And this guy was... This is probably one of my biggest complaints is... this guy was very
One-dimensional.
cookie cutter.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so cookie cutter that even Vlad didn't recognize him in the
Yeah.
scene. I mean,
Is that my old friend?
This
Nah.
is like one of those guys that anyone
Oh,
could
I know
have
this you're talking
played.
about, yeah.
Anyone could have played this character. He was neat, he was menacing, but I'm not sure if the actor was even given.
I don't even know if I would say menacing. He was annoying.
Yeah, he was, but like he had this ridiculous confidence.
That's because he has an army.
Yeah, and it's like so ridiculous, and this comes down to like I can't really blame the actor. I don't know who this actor is, but like when you're not given enough to work with, and that comes down to this 3-day restraint that like you never really get to know who this guy is. You know they consider themselves friends, brothers at the beginning of the
In
movie.
the past,
In
yeah,
the
they
past.
fought together when they were
fought
kids.
together. They were raised together, and when they finally meet, it's like you get no sense of brotherly connection or even respect between. You got like the sense
You got
of
the submissive and then you got the dominant.
and like the dude
very
that's just
much
like
so.
I'm gonna steamroll over you. Not even a sense to placate. Like, listen, brother, this is nothing personal, but this is just what I need.
Yeah.
And like if it had
But
been,
he didn't do that. He was,
but like
he's like, I'm gonna do this and I want your son because I'm a dick.
I mean, like
That's right.
This is your token asshole,
Mhm.
and that's the part that
He wasn't doing it, you're right, he wasn't doing it for any reason, and there wasn't really anything likable about him.
yeah, you're not even sympathetic or even you can respect. There's one thing to have a villain, you can understand why he's doing it, even in the context of why he's doing it in the frame of the movie. It's like, okay, we're being besieged, I need more people. I could understand that as like, listen, brother, it's like trying to connect to him person to person, but like he's talking to Dracula, to Vlad, like this guy is Shmolo the peasant boy. This guy that's supposed to be considered
Like he's Cusco and
a
Vlad
brother.
is a peasant.
And like I understand that he's supposed to be super arrogant and talk down, but like there's not even any sense to even try and connect, even if he's just going to screw him over.
He doesn't even, he doesn't even try to pretend.
It's one thing. It's one thing to say to, listen, Adam.
Yes.
I need your firstborn son to serve with me. This is tradition, and we can't break with tradition. I will train him.
I'd be pissed, but that's an excuse. That's an example.
I will look after him as if he's my own. My people demand it. My advisors demand it. We need these people
because we're
battle
a symbol. It'll show that we're together.
We're fighting war on 3 fronts. The Mennonites are attacking my borders. I need more people. This is the only way I could do it. It's nothing personal, please, but
I wish I didn't have to.
I need your support. The moment he walks out the door, okay, I want double the people. Bring him kicking and screaming.
Yep.
Then you got a nice turn of a character, but you know what?
Yeah.
You got a moment like that. This guy was just token asshole number 1.
Because I'm going to give an example, like a horrible person, but you understood where he was coming from.
Yes.
The Emperor from Star Wars.
Yes.
He was a monster. You know, he is destroying planets. He's just popping them like balloons, killing billions of people. Why? Because he wants to set an example. He has these troops. He has this armada. He wants order.
Yeah.
So he's a monster. He's evil. But you understand what he's doing. Like, I have this empire, and there is order in this galaxy.
And there was a charisma to the Emperor in Star Wars that this guy just did not have. He was a handsome, good-looking guy, but he didn't have that charisma you expect from a leader. Even a bratty charisma, like those who know Game of Thrones, Joffrey.
Isn't he dead now?
Yes.
Okay.
And well deserved.
I heard that. Everyone loved that. Okay, we're getting... Alright, now we're going to go clear on into spoiler territory. And we're going to pick up with the friar that we talked about. The friar or the priest who stalked Vlad. He comes at Vlad with this sword of silver. Which, you and I both are like, wait, wow. And like, we thought, okay, maybe it's a holy sword. You know, it's ornamental, and we just happen to have it here.
Because every abbey needs a silver sword.
Gotta be silver. That's the only way to go. And he's like, I know you're a vampire, but I also know that you're not, because I see that the cross doesn't do anything for you. Evidently, in this test trial phase with the vampire powers, until you drink blood and you basically buy the subscription.
One of the most knowledgeable friars in the world.
Again, his spidey sense goes off when this guy doesn't go into the sun. He's like, he's got to be a vampire. I'm going to follow him. Yep. All right, let me go. I got to get the silver sword. Got to go get the silver sword. And he's like, I know you're a vampire because you're staying away from the sunlight, but the cross doesn't seem to hurt you, so obviously you're not fully a vampire. Let me kill you anyway.
Okay, actually, I got to take a step back. Even before that scene, to peasant pusher man. Yes.
Oh my God! What did you say, Igor? No, they had Renfield in this movie. They had Igor Renfield.
He's even worse. This is peasant pusher man. Suddenly, when Vlad realizes
he was in the first scene, right? He's the one that found the helmet.
This was the first scene when Vlad after start realizing he has the hunger, and to avoid making his wife tonight's meal, he decides to fly off
into the forest. He needs some solitude.
And suddenly he finds a peasant there who has been following him.
Hey, he's like, I can hear you breathing.
Hey, take my blood. Make me your slave, like peasant pusher man.
This guy knows that he's backtracking again. The thing about the vampires, the fact that this friar, that this peasant, there are a few people who know what a vampire is.
Worst held secret in Transylvania.
Well, or they imply that it is. Like because he has to go to, after he goes to the cave, he goes to the priest and Padre Exposition, and he tells him, and he closes the book, and I think even the priest says, like, yeah, you're a vampire, and he's like, don't tell anybody about this. Implying that nobody knows what a vampire is. Evidently, they do. A lot of people know who a vampire, even though there's just one on a mountain who is cursed to stay there.
Yeah.
He doesn't leave the cave. They didn't fully explain. Well, they mentioned
it's
part of his curse, but I don't.
The curse, but somehow everybody knows all the weaknesses and powers and how to deal with vampires, and that comes up to the second scene in the what the fuck scene in the movie, because apparently
I'm laughing because I know because we know. Oh God!
Apparently, it's practical for a Turkish general to travel with his national budget in silver.
I kid you not, this guy
in his tent on a war campaign.
This guy. Okay, all right. So we know that vampires don't really like silver at all. In fact, it burns them. It's not good for them. And evidently, silver. Like I said, the one friar has the silver sword.
It's kind of like Twilight to real Dracula fans.
Yes, there you go. He goes to get the silver sword, and you roll with it like, all right, it's a silver sword. They're ornament. Fine. Well, okay, silver sword, whatever. But there's like the head of the Turkish army has a silver sword, and I want to say like another person has a silver sword. It
wasn't even the silver sword that the Turkish general owned. It was his national budget, his war chest, quite literally in his war tent. He had his national budget in silver, and I'm talking about a 20 by 20 room filled with nothing but coins of silver, bags of silver.
This guy has silver everywhere. It's hanging from bags in the room. It is in chests in the room, and in about a 20 by 20 room. I didn't know they made tents that big, but whatever.
No, they actually did have tents that big.
I know. I didn't realize it, but it's like 2 or 3 inches deep of silver all over the floor. This man literally does have our national debt in silver coins, in this tent.
Yes.
Who carries that with him? When do you need that much silver?
We're not talking about like a tent in his own room, in his own kingdom. No, this is his war tent. This is what he's trying to. So I'm going to ambush this guy. I'm going to somehow scourge up all the silver. This must have been all the country's silver.
Had to be.
I swear to God, to suddenly put in this tent to confront a vampire that I somehow.
Yeah, this was set up.
I have somehow discovered within the last 3 days, discovered he's a vampire. So, okay, I'm going to call to Fort Knox. Hello, I'd like, 50, 60,000 tons of silver delivered to my address.
Do you have $200 billion in silver?
Yeah,
please deliver.
Yeah, for an ambush.
Because there's a third battle, and okay. I don't know if they never implied that this leader, that this general knew any better. But he always attacked, or he would attack like during midday, like when the vampire couldn't stop him.
Somehow he was always one step ahead of him. During one of the scenes, it's just like there was a
fact, he knew that he was a vampire, but then never used that to his advantage. Just accidentally, we're going to attack you at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and so we're gonna kill a lot of people and get some good hits in. But by 6 o'clock, you're gonna just decimate our forces.
It's like wasn't really revealed to the people till day 2 that Dracula was a vampire. So somehow within a day and a half, he had gotten all this silver and was able to vampire-proof his tent.
God, it was just so. I laughed out loud. It was the weirdest thing when. Okay, so. Let's. All right, so. I'm going to jump back to the beginning where Vlad, he is here, he's got to protect his people. He's a king, he's got to protect his people, so he makes this deal with this demon and becomes this vampire. And so he kills the one army, and then he's like, well, they're going to be pissed that I murdered their entire army, so we got to fall back to, the Abbey on the other side of the mountains. So they do that. They get attacked on their way to the Abbey, people die, but some people still make it to the Abbey. And then they besiege the Abbey. And I think all but 3 people died. Like, this man made a deal with the devil for no reason. In the end, he saved nobody.
No,
he saved his son.
Yeah, he saved his son.
And that one priest.
He saved the other villagers that you saw at the end. But
all 20 of them.
Yeah, all 20 of them. But, you're left to assume the rest of the country. But this is one of the problems with the pacing. You never really got to see Vlad interact with his people. You never got to see that admiration. His people were very, whenever you saw them... They were background
characters.
Yeah, whenever you saw them, they were all background characters. You saw his main entourage, and this man had the worst bodyguards ever.
My God,
But, we can literally go on for hours.
Talk about the bodyguards. This place has the worst security. There's a... You know how in comedies, they're trying to find the secret entrance, and they're like, is that the secret entrance? And it's this door with neon lights and an arrow and sign say secret entrance, and you just walk up and it is the secret entrance. I swear to God, that's what it was for this movie. Because whenever Turkish guys snuck in, you know in movies how they'll show you them sneaking, the cover of darkness and they're slinking along, and then now they're in the castle? They didn't even show that. It's just, yep, we're here in the castle.
And you're introduced to some of these Turkish generals and soldiers that were important soldiers. They're important soldiers because they actually kill people you're supposed to care about. And that was one of the problems, is I never really cared about a lot of the side characters.
I didn't care about any of them.
Exactly. I mean, you thought, okay, this is a guy that's supposed to be important. This is supposed to be Dracula's teacher. But, I was hold up, this was his teacher?
Yeah, or his teacher.
This is one of those things that come out of the blue. While I did enjoy the movie, it was. It's not.
It's funny. The more we talk about it, the more you're finding faults with it. That being said, it was a good movie. You'll like it. You'll enjoy it. If you don't look too closely like I do, but that's my job. I review things and I look at these things.
If you're willing to go to a movie to turn off your brain, you will enjoy this movie. If you're looking for some action, you will enjoy this movie.
If you're looking for good acting and it was a good story.
The concept of the story was great, but I still come down to the question I asked initially. If this character was called anything other than Dracula, do you think it would have improved it? Or made it a worse movie?
I don't think calling it Dracula detracts from it.
I think if they actually had made it, I
think it would have been, without the name, it's still enjoyable.
I think if they had made it a complete, I kind of got to stand by, if they had made it an original character, going off the Dracula theme, it would have been much more interesting and probably a better movie. But the movie does have a lot of glaring flaws to it.
Yeah. It's enjoyable. It is fun. I'm not sorry that I saw it, but one reason why I enjoyed it is
buy it on Blu-ray.
No, I'm not gonna get it.
And that's kind of what.
Well, I have high standards for movies.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though, the movie was I wouldn't call it. It's not a bad movie. However, there were bad parts of the movie, but they were funny.
it's
like you could point and you like we're doing now. We're just pointing and we're laughing like, oh come on, a room full of who carries a room of silver around?
See,
with
I
them?
kind of agree with you. It was I think it was a bad movie. It was a good bad movie. I'm not going to say it's a horrible movie, but like there are better written. I have seen much better written stories and movies that like this movie suffered from so many glaring flaws that like if they did a reboot, I'd probably go see it. I wouldn't buy it, but I'd like to see, okay, could they maybe fix some of the mistakes they went through, because they do leave this movie open for a sequel. And
that being said, I don't think they should have had that last scene at the end.
See, I like the last scene at the end, because the last scene at the end to me kind of is what saved the movie for me. That's one of the things.
I thought it was just one step too. Again, it was just one step too further.
See, I thought that was the one thing that okay, that tied it into the actual Dracula mythology. Because still with the spoiler talk, at the end he comes and meets Mina.
Well, at the end,
he meets Mina Parker, played by his the actress who played his wife.
We're going to wrap this up, and I just want to say that getting further into spoilers, Dracula raises an army.
Oh, yeah.
During the third siege, which his wife dies during, and the majority, like I said, all but 10 people in the village are now dead. There are a few remnants who aren't quite dead yet, like they're bleeding out, and he's like, do you want to get revenge? And so he raises an army of 20 or 30 vampires. And he goes after, and they just end the Sultan and everything about him. And there's this fight, and he's fighting the Sultan sword to sword in the tent full of silver. And for some reason, it's acting like kryptonite. I know that silver hurts them, but it's sapping his strength. The longer he's in this room, the weaker he's getting. And I was that was. But
I never knew silver had a radiation to it.
Yeah.
But here's one thing I do want.
Right, and then he wipes the slate. At the very end, he realized for some reason all the other vampires do become actual real monsters. Somehow he's maintained his sanity and his humanity through all of this, and the other ones are just let's eat everything on this planet.
Well, they for the last 2 hours have been having just a bloodfish smorgasbord.
True, and so he's like, no, this isn't what I want. I'm gonna end this. And using his powers, he opens up the clouds and just cooks everybody. And everyone ashifies, except for him. And then the hippie drug dealer from earlier, he's like, yes, master. Here, drink my blood, master. And he drips his blood in Dracula's mouth, and the color returns to his face, and he comes back. That's where I thought they should have ended the movie. But then they fade to 2014, where he's dressed
in modern clothes. See, I actually like that scene. I like that scene a lot because it tied into the vampire in the beginning, where it's
Dominic Cooper comes
tied into Dominic Cooper's character,
and that was, believe it or not, until Dominic Cooper. I say that they should have ended the movie at Dracula coming back, and I'm solid on that. But then they show the other, I'm like, all right, where are they going to go with this? And even up until Dominic Cooper showed up, because Dominic Cooper's watching him, and then gets up and he's like, let the games begin again.
Yes.
And I was like, wait, what?
You get the impression that Dracula is, like I said, a tale of two monsters. You got Vlad Tepes and Dominic Cooper's character. They're actually the real Dracula, for lack of a better description. Now, the one thing, just rewind back again, the one thing I want to talk about is Dracula's wife's death. And you got the historic way in which he died, which was presented to also in the Francis Ford Coppola movie, and you have this version, which how she died. Now, historically, she died by committing suicide at the belief that her husband had been captured and murdered by the Turks. In grief and sadness, she commits suicide, which is one of the things that led Dracula into this rampage. Now, the fact that they rewrote her death in this, I kind of felt took away from the movie, was one of those things I also kind of took away from it. I thought you had a much more powerful historic death, which if they had incorporated it into this movie like Coppola did, would have added a good strength and power to Dracula going bug nuts.
I mentioned that like most people don't do the research that I do or that you do. So most people, if they even know that Dracula had a wife, that would be a surprise to them. But anyway, this is running a little bit longer than I thought.
Sorry, guys.
It's all your fault. And so any closing thoughts on Dracula? Well, I think you kind of gave your closing thoughts.
Okay, closing thoughts. How would you like 5 out of 5? How would you rate it?
Oh, I don't do that.
Okay, well, fine. Be that way.
You can rate it.
It's like short and sweet. If you're going for a good action popcorn flick,
This was a perfect popcorn movie.
You will enjoy it. It's not perfect. It's not the best thing ever. It is enjoyable, but the movie does have a lot of glaring flaws to it that will detract from a lot of people, especially traditional vampire fans, and even people with knowledge of history and stuff like that. So, this is not a movie for everyone, but it is enjoyable.
I wouldn't call it a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's an action movie more. It's an action movie first and foremost, and a sci-fi movie second.
Yes.
This movie has really good actors, or some good actors. Others are very forgettable. Other than Dominic Cooper and Luke Evans, everyone else is kind of like pretty one-dimensional and lukewarm.
Actually, I gotta give a quick call out to the son. The kid who played his son. He didn't have much to do, but like. He did sympathize. He was good with what he had, and I'd like to see where this kid goes in the future.
When he survived at the end, I was like, all right, he was the one person I cared about.
Yeah.
And you'll enjoy this movie while watching it, and I think it'll be after the movie. So it's a good ride. It's a fun ride, but after the movie, you might be like, why did he have a room full of silver?
It's one of those movies it's like you will enjoy it, but one of those movies that the more and more you think about it, the more you start to deconstruct it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure it won't be a movie that everybody will want to watch, go out their way to see. But like just watching it on like a Saturday morning on Netflix or cable.
Yeah, if it's on it, it's like right now I have no plans to put it into the rotation for I Heard That Movie Sucks. If you want it, please request it, and when it comes out, I'll do it. Other than that, I'm FilmCrazyAdam, and this is Otaku J. And if you guys like this, maybe I'll do it again with a co-reviewer. We'll see. Anyway, later all.